So good morning, everybody. Welcome to this new episode of the JCMC interview series. I am Michele Entrona, neuroanesthesiologist, as always, from Milano, Istituto Besta. And today I'm very pleased to introduce Erta Beqiri from Brain Physics Lab in Cambridge and Marta García-Orellana, co-first author of this very nice paper that we are going to talk today, which is cerebral autoregulation, derived blood pressure targets in elective neurosurgery. So welcome, Erta, and welcome, Marta.
Good
Thank you,
morning.
Michele.
So I have a first disclaimer to make today. I'm laughing because I know Erta since quite a long time. We grew up, we professionally grew up together because we are from the same residency school class. So 2015 alumni of the University of Milano Residency School in Anesthesia and Critical Care. So I always say that it's a pleasure for me to do this interview series, and it's the truth. But this time, if possible, I'm more pleased to be here because I'm very close to Erta. So thank you, Erta, for being here.
Thank you, Michele. It's a very nice thing that we can do this thing together. So I was also very pleased when you told me about this interview. It's fun to do it together after all the years we've known each other.
Absolutely. So first of all, if you, Marta, maybe if you could start telling us in brief what this study is about.
Yes, thank you, Michele. So the study aimed to find a method to provide automated blood pressure targets based on cerebral autoregulation during elective neurosurgery. And using the expertise and the methodology from Professors Chosnica and Peter Smielewski from Cambridge, they used the ICM Plus software, which was already studied in the ICU, and tried to do this in the operation room in neurosurgery. And we tried to explore a continuous automated assessment of cerebral optimal blood pressure. And that means that what's the pressure that we want at which the cerebral autoregulation is best preserved. And also we wanted to see which is the lower limit of autoregulation. And we also read in the literature that poor postoperative outcomes were related to episodes of both ischemia and hyperemia during a surgery. And this was mainly studied after a cardiac surgery. And we thought it could be possible that it also happens during a neurosurgery, when it's so important to keep the normal perfusion and the normal tension. And it's not only impossible to keep normal tension because of the ischemia and the hyperemia, it is also important to keep it and maintain it in between the ranges, because the surgeon, the surgical file is also the brain, and he has to see what he is operating in and did this moment, okay? So our question is is it possible that with this integration system, the ideal blood pressure targets can be measured or can be obtained individually?
So, how did the idea came out? If you could tell us, and I'm particularly interested in the journey from the generation of the idea to the publication. That we know it it can be sometimes problematic, and also it's nice to hear from scientists how they could start from an idea, but put the idea on paper and then on research practice.
Thank you, Michele. Michele. Well, it's a long story, but I have to mention Dr. Neus Fabregas and Dr. Ricard Valero. First of all, Dr. Fabregas was the head of anesthesia in Hospital Clinic de Barcelona. This is a big hospital in Spain. And Ricard Valero is the current head of service. In this context, I have to mention Dr. Nicolás de Riva, or Nico. He's also an anesthesiologist. He trained in Hospital Clinic de Barcelona, and in 2011, he decided to do a fellowship in Cambridge and at the neurocritical care unit. And he also went to the brain physics lab where Erta is now. So I think at that time, the research group in Cambridge was studying with Dr. Marcel Arias from Maastricht, was studying the optimal, individualized optimal perfusion targets or pressure targets after a TBI, so after a trauma brain injury. And it was then when Dr. Nicolás de Riva thought, oh, it could be very interesting to export this concept of optimal blood pressure, autoregulation, lower limit of autoregulation to the neurosurgical room. And he tried to export it. And of course, Dr. Fabregas and Dr. Valero agreed. And however, we had some budget problems. And in 2016-17, I went to Barcelona and I made a master's degree in neuroanesthesia in Hospital Clinic de Barcelona. And I met Nico, and I knew about the idea of ICM Plus software and ABP up, lower limit of, and I find it very interesting, and that's why I chose it to do my PhD there on the supervision of Dr. Ricard Valero and Nicolás de Riva.
Thank you, Marta. Sorry if I interrupt you, but
no.
This is exactly the reason why I'm trying to build this podcast and this interview series. Because it's the aim would be to be inspiring for people and to also to show what's behind the curtains. And it's not the first time, of course, when I do this question, I receive this kind of answers. And I think the key is for doing research is people, so team effort, and second, the setup, which means money, of course, so a budget, as you said, and also the proper softwares, hardwares, and the setup. And this is exactly what you are saying. So we didn't prepare anything beforehand. So thank you, because it's really inspiring for people when they will hear you talking. They will think about, okay, I can do it, and it will take some time to do it. It will take some efforts, but this is exactly what you are saying. Also, I mean, if you or Erta could tell us what were really some of the challenges, you already answered partially, but if you could tell us what were really the practical challenges that you encountered.
Perhaps I can kick off here and say that the first big challenge is the data collection, as you said. Besides the budget itself, which is important, and every research project would have a budget issue. You need the money in order to get the infrastructure going, get the right team going, and so on. But in this particular case, there is an issue because what we do is to get different data, different type of modalities from different devices all together at the same time in a certain situation, like the operating room, or in a certain context, operating room or intensive care unit or whatever that, or other scenarios. So the issue is that the different devices do not talk to each other. They speak different languages and they do not talk to each other. So you need a third-party solution like iSIM Plus. There are others out there that brings this together. But it means that then you need to make sure that iSIM Plus talks the right language with these devices. And luckily, Peter sorts that out for you. You also need to make sure that the different devices are connected correctly with the right cables, and that you have the space, the correct space, like physical space in the operating room in this case, where this can happen. So getting iSIM Plus was perhaps solving the first of these challenges, and then perhaps Marta can carry on with the other historical challenges there.
Yes, just as Erta said, they had to adapt the sensors, the cables, the software, the hardware to the operation room. And Nico Derriba always says it was not a plug and play situation, but a plug and pray situation, because it did not always work. And of course, we had always the contact with Peter and his team in Cambridge, and they help us whenever data collection was problematic, or with issues with actualization for software, so from the software. So they were always there. And another challenge was to find a surrogate marker of cerebral blood flow that we could adapt in the operation room. Well, as you know, they already had studied the MX, so the slow changes of ABP correlated with flow velocity or with intracranial pressure. That it's called PRX. But we, the anesthesiologists in the operating room, we don't have this place, because there are the surgeons who operate the brain, the sterile sizes, the Mayfield frame, and we are also located at the feet of the patient. So everything is quite far away from us, and we cannot control the sensors and the cables. It's not so easy. It's not so easy as in the intensive care. So the software developers, I think Peter and Marek, thought that maybe the brain near infrared spectroscopy called NIRS could be a very easy to place monitor, because of, you may know that these are two stickers that we place in the forehead of the patient, and it's really easy to use. It uses infrared light, and it detects when the brain has a lack of oxygen. So for these reasons, because it was very practical, they thought it could be our device in the operating room. And then came other challenges, because as you saw, we are a team that lives in Cambridge and in the Netherlands and Canada and in Barcelona, and coordinate everybody. It's not so easy. And then came the COVID pandemic, and it was a big pause, but it's another story.
What I wanted to add is that speaking about a bit of coincidences, while Marta was collecting the data with a team in Barcelona at that time, between 2015 2018, right, Marta, and slightly later on, I was in Cambridge doing my research fellowship during our residency school, Michele, while you were in Groningen. So I was in Cambridge studying these same concepts in the traumatic brain injury reality. So we were actually doing the first feasibility and safety trial on targeting cerebral perfusion pressure at the optimal value as assessed by autoregulation right then. So Well, I fell in love with the concept. I fell in love with the computational method and based on advanced signal processing, all powered by this Simple software and guided by Peter. And so Peter thought that I could be a good candidate to take on the analytical side of the project that Marta was leading in Barcelona. And so we met first online, and then we summoned her in person. There were a lot of hugs. There was a beautiful friendship that started from there. And I think Nico would say here that the friendship is the main result of this big project. But then, because of some challenges like COVID or others, the analytical side was completed only after the first year of my PhD. We started in 2020 after finishing the residency school. And then there was the challenge of actually finding a way of translating what we had done in traumatic brain injury into this, well, what the team had done in traumatic brain injury into this new setting that was the goal or the idea of the Barcelona team. So the challenge that we faced was related to the fact that in traumatic brain injury, we have a lot of hours, a lot of monitoring time. And so we have a huge buffer of data from which we can extract that information of cerebral autoregulation and the limits or the optimal blood pressure. While in neurosurgery, we have a short time. It can go from 2 or 3 hours to 8 hours, something like within these ranges. And so there is not enough time to get that variability that could probe the autoregulatory mechanism, the variability in blood pressure or of the other physiological mechanisms. And so the issue here was how do we go from a method that needs a lot of data to a method that can have just very few data. And by data, I mean something that represents the variability of the physiology. And so because I think I need to mention here how does this work? As Marta mentioned, they had decided to go for an assessment of of a surrogate assessment of cerebral blood flow with NIRS, so with the regional saturation of oxygen. And that is used together with the variability in blood pressure to assess this index of autoregulation called COX. Now, if you look at this index of autoregulation plotted versus values of blood pressure over a certain amount of time, then this relationship might show a U-shaped curve. And that is important because there's an optimum in that curve, and that optimum corresponds to the point where the index shows the best autoregulation possible. And so you need some data to build that curve. Now, in traumatic brain injury, we take at least 4 to 8 hours for assessing one value of that optimal point. We needed to figure out how to do that for the neurosurgery, and we went with the assumption that neurosurgery itself does not affect cerebral autoregulation. So autoregulation would be disturbed by changes in blood pressure or in CO2, but not by the neurosurgery event. And so we decided to translate from a multi-window approach that was applied in traumatic brain injury into a single expanded window approach for the neurosurgery, where you take progressively longer amount of data in order to increase the accuracy of what you measure, but where you could already have some assessment after just 1 hour. So this was one methodological challenge for us here. And then there was the other analytical challenge was, okay, once we have this and we can track the optimal blood pressure in time and the lower limit of regulation in time, by in time I mean minute by minute values. Now, how do we show that how do we assess the performance of the algorithm? How do we say that it's good? How do we say that it's important? And we went for, we had a challenge because we did not have any clinical outcome to compare that to. We couldn't say, look, if blood pressure is outside this range around the optimal blood pressure, the patient will go worse because we did not have the clinical outcome. So we had to compare the two variables, the real blood pressure and the calculated optimal blood pressure based on autoregulation. And so we needed to go to different kind of explorations, and we sorted this out with looking at time series approaches. So we looked at whether the variability of blood pressure influenced the variability of the optimal blood pressure within the single patient with Granger causality, linear mixed effect models, and then with a cohort assessment with generalized additive models. And then after we managed to do that, and it was actually quite involving, Marta, we had a lot of meetings during that period. We had to scratch our brains for every little detail. Then we had the publication journey, which was also difficult because this was a methodological paper. And while we thought that it was, our community thought that it was quite relevant for the clinical world, it was difficult to push it through clinical journals. That was really frustrating. We had to go through some journey there. The issue was that we were told that there is no clinical outcome, so it's not clinically relevant. This is a big thing that I think the clinical journals should change. And the other issue was that because we had used these so-called advanced methods, they were either disregarded, saying that, no, look, that's too difficult, you cannot write that in a paper, or they were sometimes commented by people that thought they knew enough about it, but whose comments were completely out of the reality. So that's a little suggestion for journals to have some more attention to the statistical methods. And funnily enough, if you wrote in a paper that you use a machine learning model, because it's a black box model, people just think, oh yeah, that's cool, that's okay, doesn't matter. But when you start putting in some more, some slightly more advanced statistical methods or signal processing methods, people get scared and it becomes difficult to push out there. So I think these were some of the analytical challenges here.
Luckily, the JCMC is there to to publish this amazing job you made.
This was the right journal. Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, and this is a call for papers. I mean, high quality, also methodological papers are more than welcome. Okay, thank you, Erta, for your really nice explanation. So I would go to the last question of this interview, more clinical, I would say. So I would like to know how do you feel the outcomes of the study should impact our practice, our today practice as anesthesiologists?
One first take-home message for everybody would be monitor. If you don't monitor, you don't know what you're doing, and just going with simple protocol thresholds, I don't think we can afford that anymore because the monitors are out there. Of course, if more advanced monitors or more refined monitoring that would allow you to individualize whatever treatment you do come over, then it would be nice if we all embrace them. And this one, what Marta was talking about, a monitor that could guide or at least to me, it's not just giving you a target, it's showing you how the autoregulatory mechanism is working for that patient at that right moment, so that you can make an informed decision on the blood pressure target. If you can change them, if you can't change them for other reasons, you're aware of what is going on at least. Of course, you're not there quite yet. This was a first step, developing the method, taken from expertise that has developed in other fields. We translated it into a neurosurgical setting. So this was, okay, developing the methods, it's feasible. Now we need to take it to the operating room and see whether by monitoring with this method, we have some data that show us that there is an association with a clinical outcome, such as postoperative delirium or any other postoperative complications, for example. At that point, there will need to be a safety trial, safety feasibility trial, and then there will need to be an outcome trial, perhaps, or maybe data-driven approaches will give us other means for doing that without going to the trial, but that's another story. I don't know, Michele, if we got the take-home messages clear enough.
Absolutely. I especially like the first one you said. So if you don't measure, you don't know. So this is a kind
Exactly.
of mantra that especially us in the board of the Journal of Clinical Monitoring and Computing are absolutely keen to promote. So thank you for once again reminding us how important it is to monitor endpoints, which doesn't mean, because it has to be said, that it doesn't mean that every monitor is essential, because we also have to take into account sustainability of what we are doing as anesthesiologists. So the challenge for the next years is to find the right setup of monitors that are right and correct for the patient we are treating. So thank you, but this is the challenge. So of course we have to show, and as you said, it's in your plans to show how is if this method is eventually safe and feasible and also useful for the clinical endpoints.
Yes, and maybe the other take-home message is, if you have a passion for research, just go for it. It's fun, it's great. You make a lot of friends along the way. And if you have one question you want to answer, take the opportunity and do it. Maybe you'll not answer the full question, but you'll add a little piece in the puzzle.
Even if there are frustrations along the road.
Yeah, exactly. Even there are frustrations along the road.
It's worth, at least it's worth the effort.
Yes, and then you get to the interview with Michele and Trona, so what
exactly.
more?
Okay, I think that our time is running out. So if you have something more to say to our audience, otherwise I think we are going to an end.
I think I would just send a lot of hugs to all our team. Marta, what do you think? To Nico and the guys in Barcelona.
To Barcelona team and Cambridge team, and
of course my supervisor Peter and the whole team in biophysics. Michele, we should say hi to all our teammates and Policlinico of Milan, of course.
We should also say hello to our classmates.
Yeah, exactly. Yes,
2015
absolutely. Hi, guys. Ciao, raga.
Ciao. We are here. We are growing up. So it's so nice. There are a few people doing research in our class that are growing up around the world. So very nice to see it.
That's nice, and it's nice that we still remain connected, as I said in the beginning.
Exactly. So thank you. I very appreciate when people are informal in our podcast, because we leave the academic discussions and the academic formal stuff for other contexts. This is the place where people need to be free to express. So thank you once again to Erta and Marta. Thank you very much for participating in our interview series.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. I also remind to people listening us to follow us on social media, so YouTube, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, on LinkedIn. Recently, I opened up a LinkedIn account, Twitter. So please follow us and listen to our contents, because it's very important for us to grow up and to give us the chance of promoting this kind of high quality scientific publications. So thank you, and see you in JCMC interview series.